Hey guys, how's it going? Comparing here. So today I want to go semi-in-depth into what the Ranger skill tree was changed to, and kind of how you can maneuver around the skill tree, being a Ranger or being another class. And pretty much you can go to this on end forever. Passive combinations and Path of Exiles are practically endless, but I want to guide you guys and show you guys how I think of these things, and maybe it gives you guys some ideas about your build, or maybe inspires you guys to play a Ranger. So this is a Ranger I have an Onslaught. It got a full free respec because most of the stuff got massive changes in the Ranger tree, and I'm sure if you've logged in, you've checked out a lot of the notable passives, but I want to go over them really quickly just to highlight the really powerful ones. So the old Perfect Aim was changed into a Ballistic Mastery. Pretty much it gained 20% projectile speed, which is really insane for Freeze Pulse builds and EK builds, because those builds really need projectile speed. So that node is now fairly good, because you can come as a caster from the top into it as a non-ranger and get the projectile damage nodes there. Or if you want, you can waste 2 points as a ranger going through there, or if you're life-based, you can probably go through the bottom. Through the bottom, the old evasion nodes got changed into evasion life nodes. Finesse got a huge buff. It gets 20% accuracy, more attack speed, and a little bit less dexterity. And these two nodes were added. These are not previously seen on the passive tree. Primal Spirit is really insane for racing, but as far as the complete character goes, it's just pretty good. It's probably worth the 2 points if you're struggling on mana, but if you're not, it's probably not worth the 2 points. You can get it for 2 points through the top if you really need attack speed, but more than likely you'll get it by going up from Finesse, by getting 2 points there. 8% mana, and then 20% mana regen, 20% mana regen from Flasks, 20 strength, 20 int. The mana regen from Flasks is pretty crap for an endgame character, but considering you get 20 mana regen, 40 stats, and 8% mana for 2 points, that's pretty good. I think that's worthwhile. As far as Heart of the Oak is really good for life-based characters who are not going Unwavering stance, because you can, perhaps get some evasion or just get Iron Reflex if you want, but it allows you to avoid being stunned from, every now and then, and you get life regen, and you get, percent life. But this node is actually really, really strong when combined with a CI-based character as well, because my understanding, while this has not been confirmed by the devs or anything, but my understanding is that all the cannot be stunned bonuses, cannot be interrupted bonuses are additive. So what that means is, if you are a CI-based character, you can go through a Ranger through the top, get that projectile damage, projectile speed, get block, stun, recovery, and also get this node, 30% chance to avoid being stunned. And as you know, if you have Energy Shield, and if you have a CI character, all you have is Energy Shield, you should have 80% chance to avoid being stunned, and 1% life regen. This is really incredible when combined with the passives on the Templar side of the skill tree, namely Zealot's Oath. So if you get Zealot's Oath, you get another 1% ES regen, but also what a lot of people don't realize is Steady Hands would act in the same way. So if you have Steady Hands along with the Ranger passive along with CI, you have 100% chance to avoid interruption while casting. So if you're just spamming casting, you actually cannot be stunned, and you don't need Unwavering stance, you don't need IF Cheila. Again, this is not confirmed by the devs, but I'm pretty sure it works this way. And the synergy of going through this route on the Templar is worth it for CI, and going that deep in the Ranger may be worth it for some people. My opinion, especially people that use Ethereal Knives or Freeze Pulse. So some really interesting combinations there. Aspect of the Eagle was buffed tremendously from its old form, but this is mostly for physical bow rangers, and physical bow rangers are pretty mediocre at this time, so they kind of needed it. A lot of good bonuses there. One thing to note is that after you get that, a lot of the nodes that you get afterwards are pretty good. You can get, attack speed crit chance, which is, pretty good when it leads into a crit multiplier node. Or you can get 15% physical with bows, which by the standard passive tree at this time is actually a very good use of points. So you can get out of the Ranger tree that way there. In addition to that, they put the Gymnastics node a little bit higher up, but they didn't really nerf these nodes, they actually buffed them. Instead of them being 6/6 and then the 6% node, and on the other side it was the gymnastics node. These are both 10%, and 10% life is about the same as the gymnastics in terms of total life for a typical character. So these life nodes are buffed. That node was added in, which is really good. And now they have these new type of nodes, which are evasion life nodes, which are the same as the ones that start in the ranger tree, but you get this last one here, which is 4% increased physical damage, evasion, and life. That is an amazing node. And one thing to note is that the 4% increased physical damage doesn't apply to any particular kind of weaponry, meaning you can buff the damage of ethereal knives. So an ethereal knives character who's going for that projectile speed has additive incentive to go over here as well. Other than that, the changes are not too drastic. Overall, it's very, very interesting. A lot of the nodes here apply to the melee, but they're not quite as overpowered because melee is not quite as overpowered as the other builds at this point in time. But what I want to show you guys is how to escape the ranger tree from a ranger, and typically the same concept leads in when other characters or other classes are trying to get in the ranger tree. So in Path of Exile, there's like these super efficient highways, and while these may change, proving this video a little bit useless, but I don't think these are different from the ranger tree being changed at this point in time. There's these highways that tend to really be efficient, and a lot of people use them. So what a lot of people do is they go CI, or they go like some kind of ranger build, or some kind of like shadow build or whatever. They come from the top and they go on the outside here, because if you go on the outside, there's like these crazy nodes. There's this is called alchemy or something. It's not herbalism, I don't know. You also get crystal skin. You get these super efficient life nodes. You get the newly buffed heart seeker for crit multiplier. And there's just a lot of crazy stuff that you get here. And they typically go down this way in order to get sometimes point blank, but most often to get iron reflex, and then continue along the outside to get unwavering stance. So going along the outside is one of the super highways, and the connection points can be here. So you can connect through the ranger tree going up through there, or you can connect through these 30 stat nodes. So typically you'd go along this route, and sometimes if you're ES you get a 30 in, sometimes if you're life-based character you get a 30 strength, so the connective node becomes that one. In addition, there is the connecting to the duelist side, which typically goes through this point, but can go through the bottom as well. So if you are like a one-handed type of ranger, you can go through the bottom, go through Golem's Blood, go through Water Dance, and get into the duelist that way. But most characters, they typically go through the Leather and Steel passive, or if they use projectiles through the Fury Bolts, and those two combinations typically end up through Dexterity. The others typically go through this point, as I mentioned earlier. The other thing is a lot of people like to go to the center of the tree. Typically these are characters that want to go into the Templar, into the Marauder, or into the upper parts of the Witch, trying to get static blows or something like that. That's typically connected through the center of the tree. And through the center of the tree, this is also one of the main connective points, because as you're going up, you get all these really nice life nodes, and as you go across the top here, you get all those really nice life nodes as well. Typically characters that go through this point are ones that don't really care too much about the duelist passive tree, or they want to get just a few points, or the Fury Bolts action. That's kind of what we want to do. We want to get to this point, and we want to get to that point, and we want to get to that point. Sometimes, very rarely, I think characters go through the upper part here and connect to the center or to the shadow that way, but that's a pretty easy combination. You just go for Ballistic Mastery. So that's, not going to go into that too much. So I haven't really optimized these in any way, but I've been doing this a lot, so just kind of going to wing it here and show you guys what I would come up with. So if you are a bow-based character, as a ranger, probably the best way to go is by starting with the attack speed, moving on getting the ballistic mastery, moving on getting this really sweet node, and as I mentioned, these 15 physical nodes, those are really good. If you want to be a crit based ranger, you can go through the bottom, so you can go this way and get the life nodes there and then connect through that one. But typically as a ranger, if you are physical based, again, if you're elemental based, this may or may not be worth it to go through this route, but it depends. If you are physical based though, it's probably best to go through these, especially if you're not crit based. And doing so, you can get the Revenge of the Hunted. Revenge of the Hunted is really good. I would consider a 6% evasion, 4% life node about equivalent to a 6% life node in terms of overall survivability. And this one is just, killer node. 16% evasion, I consider that as one skill point. Then you have 5% life, 4% physical damage. That's pretty much like 2 skill points. So this is like 3 skill points. So this being 3 and 1, and these being 1 and 1, you're essentially paying for these 2 nodes, and this is essentially a 30 dex node. So going from bow damage into life into 30 dex, that's pretty good efficiency. You lose some efficiency here, but you're looking at like 1 point, and then you're in the highway. You can get the strength, you can get the int, but I don't know. I think nowadays, being a ranger, already getting a lot of this stuff, you may want to choose to avoid, like the iron reflex and all that stuff. You may choose to go directly into shadow through conditioning. So that's one of the ways you do it. Another thing to keep in mind is this node is probably worth it, as if you need some life, you can get it through there. So pretty good stuff there. These life nodes here, they are pretty good, as I mentioned, but they're mostly for characters who really want that extra bit of life. I wouldn't really consider those top tier or anything like that. Another thing to note is while you can go to Heart of the Oak from the top, it's probably better to go from the bottom if you're a life-based character, because these nodes are pretty good. 18% vision, 12 life, I'd consider that a pretty solid point. And then you can continue on and get finesse that way. And if you get it from the bottom, you can connect through the bottom of the skill tree a lot more easily. And this is important because if you're getting all this evasion percent, unless of course you're making an evasion character, which in my opinion is pretty unlikely, you can connect to the bottom, to the point blank, to the iron reflex. And there's a few ways of doing this. So one way is to go through the attack speed or the movement speed, and that's pretty good. Essentially you want to get to this point because this point is equivalent to this point if you're a life-based character, because you're getting 16% life node for 1 skill point, which is pretty much like almost 3 skill points in one. So if you want to go through attack speed, you can go there and you can get that point there, and then you can use that point to connect to iron reflex, or you can go to that point and use that point to connect to iron reflex. But one more thing you can do is, you notice that this point was buffed to 10%, so this point is almost paid for, and as a result, if you wish, you can skip the attack speed and go through the side to get those life nodes there and continue on to point blank, iron reflex, or whatever you want on that side of the skill tree. However, for racing, there's a few more options, because typically when you're racing, you don't really want all these life nodes. You can connect directly through strength to the duelist, so this is another option. I think some characters may take advantage of this option, but I don't believe very many will in a fully built character like an endgame character. But you can nonetheless go through Fury Bolts and get all the duelist stuff there, then go up and do whatever you want, or go down, get Iron Reflex. So there's a lot more options this way, because you save quite a few points not getting near the life nodes. But typically, if you are making an endgame character, those life nodes are going to be worth it. The other thing to note is these nodes here, they are melee nodes, so they're pretty useless, but nonetheless there is some value in them. If you are a dual wield based character, you want to go up through the top. The aspect of the Panther node is definitely worth it, and the weapon artistry is definitely worth it, so you can get it that way. And you can escape if you want through there to get some life nodes there, or through the bottom as you previously saw. The other thing to note is if you're making a one-hand melee-based character, the aspect of the Panther can be worth it as well. And the way you'd get this is you'd go through the bottom, get the shield passives if you are a shield-based character, and then go back up through there. You can just waste 1 point, physical damage while dual wielding if you don't want the additional shield passives. But if I was making a shield character, I'd probably want to stack that stuff as much as possible, and I think this would be the optimized rep. So that's pretty much it. The Ranger overall is in a pretty cool spot on the passive tree. Some people mention that it's not really enough incentive to get into the Ranger, but that's typically how it is. I mean, typically in Path of Exile, there are some type of builds that really profit from being connected to certain passives, and most others are not. As you saw, the Ballistic Mastery offers a unique bonus, as does Heart of the Oak, as do a few other things with incredible block chance, incredible point efficiency for attack speed. There's a lot of cool stuff in there, and I think we'll see some really cool builds come out of the changes that have been made in the last few days. So hopefully you guys enjoyed it, hopefully you guys have learned something, going over these passives and better that Path of Exile game that you're playing. Anyway, guys, hope you guys enjoyed it again, and I'll see you guys tomorrow.